The emergency lights pulsed with a dull, crimson glow, painting the engineering bay in shades of blood and shadow. Chief Engineer Elara Vance braced herself against a console as another explosion rocked the indomitable will. The heavy cruiser's superstructure groaned under the strain of the attack, a sound that Elara had never heard in her 15 years of service to the Xylosian Alliance fleet. Engineering, report status. Captain Corvith's voice crackled through the damaged communication system, his typical Xylosian precision fraying at the edges. Elara wiped a streak of blue-black hydraulic fluid from her face, leaving a smudge across her ash-gray skin. Core reactor reaching critical limits. Captain, stabilizers failing. We have maybe 20 minutes before catastrophic failure. Silence stretched for 3 seconds, an eternity in battle. Understood, Corvith finally replied. Implement Protocol Omega. Elara's spine stiffened. Protocol Omega was a last resort procedure designed to prevent the ship's technology from falling into enemy hands. It was taught at the Academy, but rarely implemented outside of simulations. Sir, if I can reroute auxiliary power through the secondary. That is an order, Chief Engineer Vance. The transmission cut off. Elara looked around at the junior engineers still at their stations, eyes wide with fear that a properly disciplined Xylosian would never normally display. Begin evacuation procedures, she commanded. Get to the escape pods. I'll initiate the protocol. As they rushed to obey, Elara moved deeper into the engineering section toward the reactor core. Protocol Omega required the core to be stabilized just enough to prevent an immediate explosion that would destroy the escape pods, but to ensure it would eventually destabilize once they were clear. The ship trembled again as another impact struck the hull. This attack made no sense. The Indomitable will have been on a classified mission investigating pirate activity in the Ethelred Nebula Belt, a rarely explored and dangerous region of space. But these weren't pirate tactics. The weapons' signatures were too advanced, the attack pattern too precise, targeting exactly the structural weaknesses that only someone intimately familiar with Alliance cruiser design would know. Elara reached the reactor control room, the heat washing over her as the massive crystalline core pulsed erratically. Her fingers flew across the controls, implementing the complex sequence of commands that would ensure their safe escape but doom the ship. Engineering to bridge, she called out. Core stabilized for evacuation. You have 18 minutes, Captain. Acknowledged came the terse reply. All personnel, proceed to escape pods immediately. Elara continued working, needing to finalize the sequence. The reactor's wild fluctuations smoothed slightly under her expert guidance. 14 minutes now. She needed to finish the sequence and get to the nearest escape pod. A violent impact knocked her from her feet. Warning klaxons blared as a new alert flashed across her console. Hull breach in adjacent section. Automatic containment doors engaged. The route to her designated escape pod was now sealed off. Engineering to bridge. Captain, my primary evacuation route is blocked. Requesting permission to use maintenance shaft 7 to reach auxiliary pod bay. No response. Captain Corvith, do you copy? Static hissed through the speaker. Elara checked the ship's internal sensors. The life signs aboard were dropping rapidly as escape pods launched. Her time was running out. She gathered her emergency kit and made for the maintenance shaft, clambering through the narrow passage as the ship continued to shake around her. The reactor would hold just long enough. She had made sure of it. Emerging into the corridor near the auxiliary pod bay, Elara broke into a run. Just as she rounded the corner, she saw the last pod in the bay begin its launch sequence, its doors already sealed. Wait, she shouted, pounding on the view screen. Inside, she could see the faces of junior officers and, at the controls, Captain Corvith himself. Their eyes met through the glass. Recognition flickered across Corvith's face. For a moment, Elara thought he would abort the launch. Instead, he turned away and pressed the final launch control. No! Elara slammed her fist against the reinforced glass as the pod disengaged from the ship, carrying away her last hope of survival. The betrayal burned colder than the vacuum of space that would soon claim her. Corvith had seen her. He had chosen to leave her behind. The ship's computer announced in its flat, emotionless voice, "Reactor critical in 10 minutes. All personnel must evacuate immediately." Alara stood frozen for a moment, processing what had just happened and what it meant. Then, training and survival instinct took over. She still had 10 minutes. 10 minutes to find another way to live. She sprinted through the corridors, mentally cataloging the ship's layout. The main escape pods were gone. The auxiliary pods were gone. But there was one other possibility, the maintenance pod. Little more than a sealed maintenance compartment with minimal life support. It wasn't designed for long-term survival or travel, but it might keep her alive long enough. For what? She wasn't yet sure. With 3 minutes to spare, Alara sealed herself inside the maintenance pod. It was barely large enough for her to sit with her knees drawn up to her chest. The life support systems were functional but basic. No propulsion system, minimal communications array, just enough power to maintain oxygen, heat, and the integrity of the pod itself. As the countdown reached 0, Alara felt the violent shudder of explosive bolts firing, jettisoning the maintenance pod clear of the ship. Through the small viewpoint, she watched as the indomitable Will, once the pride of the Xylosian Alliance fleet, erupted into a brilliant, silent explosion, sending fragments of metal and crystal spinning into the darkness of the nebula. Then came the silence. The terrible, absolute silence of space, broken only by the sound of her own breathing and the faint hum of the pod systems. Alara was alone, betrayed by her captain, abandoned by her fleet, left to die in the vastness of space. In the hours that followed, as the reality of her situation settled over her, Alara fought to maintain the disciplined calm that was the cornerstone of Xylosian culture. She took inventory of her resources. The pod had emergency rations and water recycling sufficient for perhaps 2 weeks if she was careful. The life support would last a bit longer. The communication system was functional but weak, designed for short-range transmissions to the mothership, not for sending distress calls across interstellar distances. She tried anyway, broadcasting on all Alliance emergency frequencies. No response came. As she drifted among the debris field that had once been her ship, Alara accessed her personal data tablet. Perhaps there was something there that could explain why Corvith had left her to die. The tablet had been damaged in her desperate escape, many files corrupted, but one partial log entry caught her attention. Rumors confirmed. The ancient artifact exists within the nebula. High Command wants it secured without any record. Civilian witnesses eliminated. Corvith seems disturbed by the orders, but compliant. I don't understand why an archaeological find warrants such secrecy. Something about the energy signatures. The rest was corrupted, but it was enough. This hadn't been a pirate suppression mission at all. They had been searching for something old and powerful that the Alliance wanted kept secret. Secret enough to kill for. Alara leaned back against the cold wall of the pod, pieces falling into place. The attack hadn't been pirates. It had been staged. A way to eliminate everyone who might have learned too much about this ancient artifact. And she, with her access to all ship's systems and logs as chief engineer, had been deliberately left behind to ensure her silence. The realization should have filled her with despair. Instead, a cold anger began to form. If she survived, somehow, there would be a reckoning. But first, she had to live. Days passed. Alara rationed her supplies carefully, modified the life support systems to increase efficiency, and continued broadcasting distress signals on shifting frequencies, hoping someone might hear. She slept in fitful bursts, haunted by dreams of Corvith's face as he abandoned her, of the academy, where she had sworn oaths to a fleet that had betrayed her. On the 7th day, with her hope fading along with the pod's power reserves, the short-range scanner beeped. Alara jerked awake, certain she had imagined it. But the scanner showed a clear contact, a vessel approaching, not from the direction of Alliance space, but from deeper within the nebula. The configuration was unlike anything in the Alliance database. a patchwork design that seemed to have been assembled from disparate parts rather than built to a unified blueprint. She hesitated before broadcasting. If this was an Alliance ship coming to finish the job Corvith had started, revealing her position would seal her fate. But if it was someone else, anyone else, it might be her only chance. Alara activated the transmitter. This is Chief Engineer Alara Vance of the former Xylosian Alliance vessel, Indomitable Will. I am in a maintenance pod with failing life support, requesting assistance. For long moments, there was no response. Then the comm crackled to life. Well, a Xylosian in a pickle. That's not something you see every day. The voice was female, relaxed, with an accent Alara couldn't place. Decidedly non-Xylosian in its informality. My pod is failing, Alara repeated, choosing to ignore the inappropriate levity. I require immediate evacuation. Yeah, I can see that from here. Looks like you're running on fumes. Hang tight. We're engaging our magnetic tractor. Might be a bit of a bumpy ride. This tech is, let's call it, creatively acquired. Alara felt a jolt as the pod was caught in an invisible grip. Through her viewport, she could see the strange vessel growing larger. It was indeed a patchwork creation, with mismatched hull plating and what appeared to be components from at least 3 different technological traditions grafted together into a functional, if inelegant, whole. As the pod was drawn into a small docking bay, Alara prepared herself for whatever might come next. She had her sidearm, standard issue for all Alliance officers, but against an entire ship's crew, it would offer little protection. Still, she wouldn't go without a fight if these proved to be hostiles. The pod settled onto the deck with a gentle thump. Alara heard the hiss of atmosphere being pumped into the bay, then the clank of magnetic seals engaging on her pod's hatch. With a hydraulic sigh, the door opened. Standing before her was a human woman in a battered space suit that had seen better decades. She had dark hair pulled back in a utilitarian knot, weathered skin that spoke of a life lived under various suns, and alert eyes that missed nothing. Despite her casual stance, Alara noted the way she positioned herself, ready to move quickly if necessary. Captain Eva Rostova of the independent vessel Wanderer. The woman introduced herself with a slight nod. Welcome aboard. Can you walk, or do you need medical assistance? Alara straightened her spine and stepped from the pod with as much dignity as her cramped muscles would allow. I am functional. Eva raised an eyebrow. That's not what I asked, but I'll take it as a yes. Follow me. Our medical bay isn't exactly fleet standard, but it's clean, and our doctor knows his way around most species' anatomies. As they exited the docking bay, Alara took in every detail of the ship. The corridors were narrow, utilitarian, with exposed conduits and patch jobs evident everywhere. Yet there was an undeniable functionality to it all. This vessel might not win beauty contests, but it was clearly maintained by people who understood the practicalities of space travel. The crew they passed were a diverse lot, humans predominantly, but also members of species that the Alliance categorized as problematic. A towering Zentari with bioluminescent patterns shifting across his scaly skin, a pair of Vex twins with their characteristic 4 arms and iridescent eyes, and what appeared to be a sentient mechanical being composed of salvaged parts. Your crew is eclectic, Alara observed. Eva chuckled. That's a diplomatic way of putting it. We're a salvage and exploration vessel. Everyone here has a skill that keeps the ship running and the credits flowing. Salvage, Alara repeated flatly. You're scavengers. Opportunistic entrepreneurs. Eva corrected without taking offense. The Wanderer specializes in finding things others have lost or abandoned. Sometimes that's cargo, sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's people floating in dead pods. She gave Alara a pointed look. Speaking of which, want to tell me what a Xylosian Alliance chief engineer is doing drifting alone in a maintenance pod in a restricted nebula? Before Alara could formulate a response that revealed nothing while satisfying her rescuer's curiosity, they arrived at the medical bay. A tall, thin man with a shock of white hair and augmented ocular implants glanced up from a holographic display. Our guest from the void, I presume, he said, his voice carrying a different accent than the captain's. Dr. Marcus Way, ship's physician and occasional botanist. Please sit. Alara complied, still wary, but increasingly certain that whatever this crew's intentions were, immediate harm wasn't among them. I was aboard the cruiser Indomitable Will, she explained as Dr. Way ran a scanner over her. We were attacked. The ship was destroyed. I was the only survivor. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either. The doctor and captain exchanged a look that Alara couldn't interpret. Alliance cruisers don't typically patrol this deep in the Ethelred Nebula, Eva remarked casually. Must have been important business. Classified, Alara replied automatically. Eva smiled, a small, knowing expression. Everything with the Alliance is classified. Doesn't mean it stays that way. She turned to the doctor. She good to go? Mild dehydration, some muscle atrophy from confinement, elevated stress markers, but nothing critical, Dr. Way reported. I'd recommend rest, fluids, and a decent meal. Xylosian physiology is robust. Good. Get some rest, Eva told Alara. We'll talk more when you're recovered. We're headed to Haven Station, neutral territory. You can arrange passage back to Alliance base from there if that's what you want. With that, the captain left, leaving Alara with more questions than answers. The doctor provided her with hydration supplements and showed her to a small but clean cabin. The facilities are communal, he explained. Galley is one level down. The crew runs on a standard 20-hour cycle, currently mid-shift. Captain's only rule is everyone contributes while aboard. I understand, Alara said. In the Alliance, every resource was allocated with mathematical precision. Contribution and consumption were always balanced. Left alone, Alara sank onto the narrow bunk. For the first time since the attack, she allowed herself to truly process what had happened. She had been betrayed, left to die, rescued by humans, a species known in the Alliance as unpredictable, emotional, and only recently emerged onto the galactic stage. Now she was aboard their hodgepodge vessel, headed for a space station outside Alliance territory. And somewhere in the nebula was an ancient artifact powerful enough that the Alliance was willing to kill to keep it secret. Sleep claimed her before she could follow that thought to its conclusion. Alara awoke to the unfamiliar sensation of a ship in motion that didn't conform to Alliance vibration standards. The Wanderer's engines produced a distinctive rumble that no Xylosian engineer would have tolerated. Yet, she had to admit, the ship flew, and apparently well enough. After using the communal facilities, far more basic than she was accustomed to, but functional, Alara made her way to the galley. Several crew members were present, conversations flowing in multiple languages. They fell silent when she entered, appraising her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. The mechanical being she had glimpsed earlier approached, its mismatched optical sensors focusing on her with surprising intensity. New organic requires nutritional intake, it declared in a voice that sounded like it had been assembled from different audio sources. Scrap can provide appropriate sustenance for Xylosian physiology. Scrap is our engineer, explained a melodious voice. Alara turned to see the Centauri she had noticed earlier. I am Rorik, ship's navigator. You must forgive the crew's curiosity. We do not often entertain Alliance personnel. Former Alliance, Alara corrected, the words surprising even herself. But they were true, weren't they? The moment Corvith had sealed that escape pod with her still on the dying ship, her service had ended. Rorik's bioluminescent patterns shifted in what Alara recognized as a pattern of interest. Indeed, that is unusual. Scrap returned with a tray containing synthesized protein cubes, a hydration bulb, and what appeared to be a nutrient paste in Alliance military packaging. Preserved from salvage operation, Scrap explained, still within consumption parameters. Alara accepted the tray with a nod of thanks, noting that despite his ramshackle appearance, Scrap had managed to assemble a perfectly balanced Xylosian meal. Perhaps there was more to this crew than met the eye. She took a seat at an empty table, but didn't remain alone for long. Eva slid into the seat across from her, carrying a mug of steaming liquid that smelled both bitter and enticing. Sleep well, the captain asked. Adequately, Ilara replied. Good, because we need to talk. Eva's casual demeanor had sharpened into something more focused. My crew detected multiple vessels converging on the debris field we pulled you from. Alliance vessels, acting very interested in finding something or someone. Ilara's hand paused midway to her mouth. They're looking for survivors. Maybe Eva agreed. Or maybe they're looking to make sure there aren't any. Either way, they seemed very thorough for a standard recovery operation. Ilara considered her options. This human had saved her life, but that created no obligation to reveal classified information. Yet if the Alliance was indeed searching for her to silence her permanently, as she suspected, these humans might be her only allies. Our mission was to locate an artifact of significant value to the Alliance, she said carefully. I believe the attack on our ship was not by pirates, but staged to eliminate witnesses while recovering the artifact. Eva didn't look surprised. And you think they left you behind on purpose? I know they did. Captain Corvith saw me at the escape pod. He chose to launch without me. Eva whistled low. That's cold, even for Xylosians. No offense. None taken. Ilara hesitated, then decided to reveal more. I found a damaged log entry mentioning an ancient artifact within the nebula. Something with unusual energy signatures that High Command wanted secured in absolute secrecy. Now genuine surprise flickered across Eva's face, quickly replaced by calculation. What a coincidence, she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. The Wanderer happens to be in the business of finding valuable artifacts, especially ancient ones with interesting energy signatures. You're not just salvagers, Ilara realized. You're artifact hunters. Among other things, Eva acknowledged. This nebula is littered with remnants of civilizations long gone. Most are scientifically interesting, but commercially worthless. Occasionally, though, we find something special. She leaned forward. Something the big powers might kill to possess. Before Ilara could respond, the ship's intercom crackled. Captain to the bridge. Priority alert. Eva was on her feet instantly. Come with me, she told Ilara. I think you'll want to see this. The bridge of the Wanderer was cramped compared to the spacious command center of the Indomitable Will, but it buzzed with efficient activity. Rorik sat at the navigation console, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing rapidly. A human woman with augmented reflexes operated the helm, while a Vex twin monitored communications. What is it, Rorik? Eva asked as they entered. Alliance patrol vessel on intercept course, the Zentari reported. Designation vigilant. They are broadcasting a demand for all vessels in the sector to heave for inspection. Ilara felt a chill run through her. Commander Talos commands the vigilant. He was Corvitha's executive officer before receiving his own command. Eva gave her a sharp look. Friend of yours? Hardly. Talos is ambitious, rigid even by Xylosian standards. He follows orders without question and expects the same from others. So, if he's been ordered to find and eliminate witnesses, he will do so efficiently and without hesitation, Ilara confirmed. Eva turned to the communications officer. Patch me through to them, Mira. The Vex twin manipulated controls with all four hands. Channel open, Captain. Xylosian vessel vigilant. This is Captain Eva Rostova of the Independent Trader Wanderer, Eva said, her tone shifting to a more formal cadence. We acknowledge your presence, but must inform you that we are on a sanctioned salvage operation and not subject to Alliance inspection in neutral space. A cold, precise voice responded almost immediately. Wanderer, this is Commander Talos of the Alliance fleet. We are investigating a terrorist attack on an Alliance vessel. All ships in this sector must submit to inspection to ensure they're not harboring fugitives or contraband related to this incident. Eva muted the transmission and looked at Ilara. Terrorist attack? That's how they're playing it. A convenient explanation for a destroyed cruiser, Ilara agreed. What will you do? Well, I'm not letting them board us. That's for damn sure. Eva unmuted the channel. Commander Talos, we have no knowledge of any terrorist activity. We are a registered salvage vessel with proper documentation. Nevertheless, you will prepare to be boarded or face the consequences of obstruction. Eva rolled her eyes and muted again. Typical Alliance. To Rorik, she said, plot us a course through the Carillion debris field. Mira, stall them. Ling, be ready to punch it on my mark. To Alera's surprise, the crew moved with coordinated precision, no arguments or questions. Perhaps there was more discipline aboard this human vessel than she had given them credit for. Wait, Alera said suddenly. Let me speak to Talos. Eva raised an eyebrow. You sure that's wise? If he knows you survived. Precisely. It may cause confusion, buy us time. Alera straightened her uniform by reflex. And I have questions of my own. After a moment's hesitation, Eva nodded. Your funeral. Literally, maybe. Mira, put the chief engineer through. Alera stood straight as the channel opened. Commander Talos, this is Chief Engineer Alera Vance of the Indomitable Will. Silence stretched for several seconds. That is impossible, Talos' voice finally came, the smallest waver in his Xylosian precision. All hands were lost with the Indomitable Will. Evidently not all, Alera replied. I managed to reach a maintenance pod before the reactor went critical. Captain Corvith saw me at the escape pod bay. He launched without me. Another pause, longer this time. Alera could imagine the calculations running through Talos' mind. Chief Engineer Vance, if it is truly you, then you must understand the importance of returning to Alliance space immediately. You are a witness to a terrorist attack and possess valuable intelligence. Doi, Commander. Intelligence about pirates. Or about the ancient artifact the Indomitable was really sent to recover. She heard a sharp intake of breath through the comm. Those are classified matters not to be discussed on open channels. You will surrender yourself immediately. Alera looked at Eva, who was watching her with newfound respect. I think not, Commander, Alera replied. Captain Corvith left me to die. That suggests the Alliance has no further use for me. Or perhaps too much to fear from what I know. I will find my own way. This is treason, Talos hissed, his composure finally cracking. That vessel you're on harbors criminals and scavengers. They cannot protect you from the Alliance. Perhaps not, Alera acknowledged. But at least they didn't leave me to die in space. Vance out. Eva signaled Mira to cut the transmission, a slow smile spreading across her face. Well. That was quite a performance from a supposedly emotionless Xylosian officer. Xylosians are not emotionless, Alera corrected. We simply do not allow emotions to cloud judgment or disrupt efficiency. And was that little speech efficient? Eva asked, clearly amused. Extremely. Talos will now be uncertain, questioning his orders, wondering what I know and who else might know it. Psychological disruption is a valid tactical approach. A warning tone sounded from Rorik's console. The Vigilant is powering weapons systems. Time to go. Eva decided. Ling, take us into the debris field. Rorik, find us the densest area of sensor interference. Scrap. She hit the intercom. I need everything you can give the engines and shields. The Wanderer surged forward, its patchwork systems coming alive with surprising power. Alera grabbed a support rail as the ship accelerated, the artificial gravity compensators struggling to keep up. Your tactical assessment, Eva asked her as they plunged toward a massive field of asteroid fragments and ancient debris. Alera considered. The Vigilant is faster in open space, but less maneuverable. Its sensors are superior, but will be hampered by the mineral content of the larger asteroids. They'll likely attempt to predict our exit vector and intercept rather than follow directly. My thoughts exactly, Eva agreed, which is why we're not going to exit. Rorik, take us to the heart of the field, to that structure we cataloged last month. The derelict station, Rorik's bioluminescent patterns flashed in surprise. Captain, we haven't properly surveyed it yet. The radiation levels will mask our presence beautifully, Eva finished for him. Trust me. As the Wanderer wove through the increasingly dense field of debris, Alera found herself both impressed by the crew's skill and disturbed by their apparent disregard for safety protocols. No Alliance helmsman would navigate so close to potential collision objects. No Alliance captain would hide in an unsurveyed radiation zone. Yet she couldn't deny their effectiveness. Within minutes, the sleek Alliance patrol ship was reduced to an intermittent contact on their sensors, clearly struggling to track them through the interference. "There," Rourke announced, pointing to a looming shadow on the view screen. The station. It was like no space station Alara had ever seen. Ancient beyond reckoning, it was a twisted structure of metal and crystal that seemed to defy conventional engineering. Parts of it appeared to have been carved directly from a massive asteroid, while others showed signs of construction techniques unknown to modern science. "What is this place?" she asked, unable to hide her fascination. "We don't know," Eva admitted. "We found it last month while tracking unusual energy signatures. Preliminary scans suggest it's at least 50,000 years old, possibly created by the predecessors." "The predecessors are a myth," Alara objected automatically. Every Academy cadet knew the stories of a supposed super-advanced civilization that had vanished long before recorded history, leaving behind miraculous technologies. But no credible evidence had ever been found. Eva shot her an enigmatic smile. "Are they? Dock us in that sheltered opening, Ling. Minimal power once we're secure." As the Wanderer nestled into what appeared to be an ancient docking cradle that, impossibly, still functioned, Alara's mind raced. If this station was what Eva suggested, a genuine predecessor artifact, it would be the archaeological find of the millennium. And if it was connected to whatever the Indomitable will have been sent to find. "Now what?" she asked as the engines powered down, leaving the ship in eerie silence. "Now," Eva said, standing, "we wait for the Alliance to give up and move on. And while we wait, we can do what we came to this nebula to do in the first place. Explore this station." "That would be extremely unsafe without proper surveys and protocols," Alara pointed out. "Life's unsafe," Eva countered, "but Scrap has been analyzing the radiation. It's unusual, but not immediately harmful to most biologicals." She looked directly at Alara. "I'm offering you a chance to come with us, Chief Engineer, to see what your Alliance was so desperate to keep secret that they'd leave you to die for it. Are you in?" Alara hesitated. Everything in her training screamed that this was reckless, that proper procedures weren't being followed. But that same training had led her to pledge loyalty to an organization that had betrayed her in the most fundamental way possible. "Yes," she decided. "I'm in." The exploration team consisted of Eva, Alara, Rorik, Scrap, and Dr. Wei, each equipped with environment suits and scanning equipment. As they moved deeper into the ancient station, Alara was struck by the alienness of the architecture. Corridors that curved according to mathematical principles that felt just slightly wrong, surfaces inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally. "The materials are unlike anything in the Alliance database," she noted, examining a section of wall that seemed to both absorb and emit light simultaneously. "How is this structure still intact after 50 millennia?" "That's one of many questions we're hoping to answer," Dr. Wei replied, carefully collecting samples. "The predecessors clearly operated on principles of physics and engineering far beyond our current understanding. They proceeded cautiously, Scrap leading the way with the most advanced sensors. The mechanical being moved with surprising grace for something assembled from disparate parts, scanning methodically and reporting findings in its staccato voice. Energy signatures increasing, similar to readings from nebula core. Direction, central chamber ahead. Alara felt a prickle of anticipation. If this station contained technology related to what the Indomitable will have been seeking. Movement detected, Scrap suddenly announced. Alliance signature. Multiple hostiles. How the hell did they find us so quickly? Eva muttered, drawing a compact energy weapon. Everyone defensive positions. Alara followed the others into an alcove as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the ancient corridor. From their position, they could see a team of Alliance soldiers in full combat, gear moving with disciplined precision, led by a tall figure Alara immediately recognized as Commander Talos himself. "They must have had the station under observation already," she whispered to Eva. "Which means they knew about it before your discovery." Eva frowned. "That complicates things." They watched as the Alliance team approached a massive door that appeared to be made of a single piece of the same light-absorbing material as the walls. Talos consulted a device in his hand, then placed it against the door's surface. To Alera's astonishment, the ancient material responded, patterns of light rippling across it before the massive portal silently slid open. "They have predecessor tech," Dr. Wei breathed. "Advanced interface technology. We need to see what's in that chamber," Eva decided. "Rorik, is there another way around?" The Zentari consulted his scanner. "Possibly. These structures often have multiple access points for maintenance." "Lead the way." Quietly, they backtracked and followed a narrower corridor that curved in a disorienting spiral, eventually bringing them to an overlooking gallery above what was clearly the station's central chamber. Below them, Talos and his team had spread out around an object that made Alera's breath catch. In the center of the chamber floated a crystalline structure the size of a small shuttle, pulsing with internal light in patterns too complex to follow. It wasn't simply reflecting the lights from the Alliance team's equipment. It was generating its own illumination from within, cycling through colors that seemed to include spectra beyond normal vision. "The ancient artifact," Alera whispered. "It must be. Not just an artifact," Dr. Wei said, adjusting his scanner. "It's a data repository of some kind. Quantum-level information storage on a scale I've never seen." Below, Commander Talos approached the floating crystal, the interface device extended before him. "Secure the perimeter," they heard him order. "No one else must access this data core." The High Commander was explicit. This knowledge belongs to the Alliance alone. What knowledge? Eva wondered. What could be so important? As Talos connected his device to the crystal, the entire chamber was suddenly bathed in light as holographic projections sprang into existence around them. Star charts, technical diagrams, and text in an unknown language filled the air. It's the history of this entire region." Dr. Wei translated in awe, his augmented eyes rapidly scanning the displays. The rise and fall of civilizations, technological developments, stellar phenomena. And he stopped suddenly, his expression darkening. "What is it?" Eva pressed. "These recordings, they document the true history of the Xylosian Alliance's formation, not the version taught in their academies." Alera moved closer to the edge, straining to see the projections. What she saw made her blood run cold. The displays showed Xylosian warships of an earlier era systematically destroying civilian settlements of other species, forcing surrenders, implementing cultural purification programs, all the things that the official history claimed had never happened. The Alliance had always portrayed itself as a benevolent, unifying force, bringing order and technological advancement to a chaotic region of space. That's not possible," she whispered, though the evidence before her was undeniable. "History is written by the victors," Dr. Wei said quietly. "Every empire has its dark beginnings." But there was more. As the holographic display shifted, new information appeared. Data about something the predecessors had called the Awakening. "It's some kind of warning," Dr. Wei translated, his augmented eyes scanning rapidly. The predecessors detected a cyclical threat, a dormant entity or force that awakens roughly every 100,000 years. They built this station and others like it as monitoring posts. Alera felt the implications settle over her like a physical weight. And the cycle is nearly complete again. That's why the Alliance is so desperate to control this information. Below them, Commander Talos was issuing orders to his team. "Download the complete database." High Command wants every fragment of data, especially the containment protocols for the entity. "What's he talking about?" Eva whispered. "I don't know," Alera admitted. "But if the Alliance is seeking containment protocols, it suggests they already know something is awakening." Their whispered conversation was cut short as one of Talos' soldiers looked up, alerted by some small sound or movement. "Commander, intruders in the upper gallery." Talos' head snapped up, his eyes locking with Alera's across the distance. "Chief Engineer Vance," he called, his voice echoing in the ancient chamber. I see treachery has become a habit for you. I learned from the best, Commander, she replied, standing to her full height. Captain Corvith taught me that alliance loyalty only extends as far as convenience. You don't understand what's at stake, Talos said, his voice betraying genuine urgency. This information cannot become public. The panic alone would destabilize the entire sector, or perhaps undermine alliance control, Eva suggested, also rising to stand beside Alara. Hard to maintain a galactic empire when people learn it was built on genocide and lies. Talos signaled to his soldiers, who raised their weapons. I have my orders. No weaknesses. No loose ends. The first energy blast struck the wall beside them, showering them with fragments of the ancient material. The Wanderer crew scattered, returning fire as they sought cover among the strange architectural features of the gallery. We need to get back to the ship, Eva shouted over the chaos of weapon discharges. Alara's mind raced. They couldn't outrun or outfight a fully armed Alliance squad, but perhaps they didn't need to. Her eyes fell on Scrap, who was interfacing with a section of the wall that bore similar markings to the main entrance. Scrap, she called. Can you access the station systems? The mechanical being's optical sensors flashed. Attempting interface. Predecessor systems complex but logical. Patterns recognizable. Under covering fire from Eva and Rorik, Alara crawled to Scrap's position. The predecessors built these stations as monitoring posts. They must have had defenses in case the entity they were watching broke containment. Scrap's manipulators moved across the alien controls with increasing confidence. Defensive systems detected. Dormant but functional. Activation requires authorization. Alara glanced down at the chamber below, where Talos and his team were still downloading data from the crystal. The interface device he was using seemed to be providing some form of access credentials to the ancient systems. Can you simulate the authorization signature from Talos' device? She asked. Scrap's processors hummed as he considered. Possible. Signal detectable. Complexity high, but not insurmountable. Do it, Alara decided. To Eva, she called, we need to keep them busy for a few more minutes. Eva grinned, a wild expression that no Xylosian would ever display in combat. Distraction is my specialty. She pulled a small cylinder from her belt, adjusted something on its end, and tossed it into the chamber below. The device detonated with a blinding flash and an ear-splitting shriek that seemed to resonate with the crystalline structures around them. Talos and his soldiers staggered, disoriented. Signal captured, Scrap announced. Defensive systems activating. The entire station trembled. From concealed recesses in the walls, strange mechanisms emerged. Not weapons in any conventional sense, but projectors that filled the air with shifting patterns of light and sound. The Alliance soldiers clutched their heads, their coordination suddenly failing them. The effect seemed to intensify around those carrying weapons or active technology. What is this? Rorik asked, wincing as the patterns washed over them. Some kind of non-lethal defense system, Dr. Wei theorized, his expression fascinated despite their dire situation. It's targeting aggressive intent and disrupting neuromuscular coordination. In simple terms, Eva added, it's giving the bad guys the worst migraine of their lives. Now, let's go while we can. They retreated through the twisting corridors, the sounds of confusion and disarray echoing behind them. Talos' furious orders became increasingly incoherent as the ancient defense system hampered his ability to organize pursuit. As they reached the docking area, Alara paused, a realization striking her. The data. We need to take it with us. Are you crazy? Eva demanded. We barely escaped with our lives. The Alliance already has part of it. If we leave with nothing, they'll control the narrative. The truth about the entity, whatever it is, and about the Alliance's true history will remain hidden. Eva hesitated, clearly torn between survival instinct and the value of such information. She's right, Dr. Wei said unexpectedly. If this entity is real, if there's truly some cyclical threat awakening, people deserve to know. Not just the Alliance. After a moment's intense consideration, Eva nodded. Scrap, Can you download any of the data without going back to the main chamber? Predecessor network accessible throughout station. Scrap confirmed. Partial download possible from any interface point. Quality and completeness uncertain. Do it, Eva ordered. But make it fast. I don't want to be here when those soldiers recover their wits. While Scrap connected to a wall panel near the docking bay, extracting what data he could from the ancient network, Elara kept watch, her mind still reeling from what she had learned. Everything she had believed about the Alliance, about her own people's history, had been built on carefully constructed lies. And now, it seemed, those same leaders were hiding an even greater threat, something ancient and powerful enough to concern even the legendary predecessors. Download complete, Scrap announced after several tense minutes. 27% of total database acquired. Focus on historical records and entity containment protocols as specified. That'll have to do, Eva decided as distant sounds of recovery and pursuit reached them. Everyone aboard now. They raced back to the Wanderer, sealing the airlock just as the first Alliance soldiers appeared at the far end of the docking bay. Eva slid into the pilot's chair, her hands flying across the controls. Rorik, get us a path out of here that doesn't involve a direct confrontation with the Vigilant, she ordered. The debris field is still our best option, the Zentari replied, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing with stress. But they'll be expecting that. We need a diversion. Elara stepped forward. I can help with that. The Vigilant sensor array has a design flaw, a blind spot in the ventral quadrant when the primary weapons are deployed. If we launch with sufficient acceleration and maintain a specific vector relative to their position, we can exploit it. Eva gave her an appraising look. That's classified Alliance technical information you're offering up. As you noted, Elara replied evenly. Treachery has become a habit. A slow smile spread across Eva's face. I think I like the new you, Chief Engineer. Ling, prepare for maximum burn on my mark. Rorik, plot the course Elara suggests. Everyone strap in. This will not be comfortable. The Wanderer disengaged from the ancient docking port with a metallic shriek, its engines flaring to life with exceptional power for a ship of its size and apparent condition. Elara felt the crushing force of acceleration press her into her seat as they shot away from the station at a precisely calculated angle. On the sensors, they could see the Vigilant moving to intercept, its weapons powering up. But just as Elara had predicted, their unusual departure vector placed them in the warship's sensor blind spot for crucial seconds. By the time Talos realized what had happened, the Wanderer was deep in the debris field, weaving through asteroid fragments with reckless precision. They're pursuing, but cautiously, Rorik reported. The disruption from the station seems to have affected some of their systems as well. Keep us moving, Eva ordered. Random course changes, use the larger debris for cover. Make them work for it. As the chase continued through the treacherous field, Elara found herself working alongside the Wanderer's crew with unexpected synchronicity. Her knowledge of Alliance tactics allowed them to predict pursuit patterns. Their familiarity with the debris field let them exploit hiding places and ambush points. Several tense hours later, as they sheltered in the shadow of a massive fragment of what might once have been a moon, Rorik finally reported what they'd been hoping for. The Vigilant is breaking off pursuit. They're setting course back toward Alliance space. A cheer went up from the crew. Eva leaned back in her chair with a satisfied sigh. Probably received orders to secure what data they already have rather than risk losing it chasing us. Or they're confident they can find us again later, Elara suggested, the tactical officer in her unwilling to assume victory too easily. Such a pessimist, Eva chided, but her expression remained thoughtful. Either way, we've bought ourselves some time. The question is, what do we do with it, and with the information we've acquired? In the ship's common area, they gathered around as Dr. Wei and Scrap worked to translate and display the data they had extracted from the predecessor station. The holographic projections were less impressive than in the ancient chamber, but the content no less disturbing. The true history of the Zylosian Alliance's formation unfolded before them. The systematic conquest of neighboring species, the suppression of resistance through methods that violated every principle of civilized conduct, the careful rewriting of history to portray themselves as saviors rather than conquerors. But more chilling was the information about the entity, the cyclical threat the predecessors had detected and monitored. The translations were imperfect, the data incomplete, but the essence was clear. Something ancient and immensely powerful slumbered in the spaces between stars, awakening periodically to feed or reproduce in a process that consumed entire solar systems. The predecessors had developed containment methods, ways to redirect or delay the entity's awakening cycle. Technology the Alliance had apparently rediscovered and now sought to control exclusively. They're not trying to prevent the awakening, Ilera realized, studying the partial containment protocols. They're trying to control it, to direct it away from their core systems and toward rival territories. Sacrificing billions to save themselves, Dr. Wei said, his voice hollow. Eva paced the length of the room, her expression grim. So what do we do? Broadcast this to every system in range? Start a panic? Trigger the collapse of the Alliance? Ilera considered the question carefully. The conditioned response, the one ingrained by years of academy training, would be to suppress this information for the greater good, to trust the Alliance leadership to handle the threat. But that Ilera had died when Corvith sealed the escape pod without her. None of those options, she said finally. Immediate, wide-scale revelation would indeed cause chaos, potentially hampering any effective response to the entity. But keeping the information solely in Alliance hands ensures it will be used only to protect Alliance interests at the expense of everyone else. What do you suggest, then? Rourke asked. A network, Ilera proposed. A careful distribution of the information to trustworthy individuals across multiple systems and political entities. Scientists who can verify and expand on the predecessor data. Military leaders who can prepare defenses independent of Alliance control. Political figures who can work toward cooperative solutions rather than sacrificial ones. A conspiracy of truth-tellers, Eva mused. I like it, but it would take time, resources, and connections we don't necessarily have. Ilera looked around at the diverse crew of the Wanderer. Outcasts, misfits, and independent thinkers who had nonetheless shown more honor than her former comrades. We have a start, she said. This ship, this crew, the connections you've made as opportunistic entrepreneurs. And I know others within the Alliance itself who would be horrified by what their leadership intends, people who might help from the inside if approached carefully. Eva studied her with newfound respect. You're proposing to build a shadow organization to counter the Alliance's plans. That's not very Xylosian of you. I'm not very Xylosian anymore, Ilera replied simply. When Captain Corvith left me to die, he freed me from more than just Alliance service. He freed me from the constraints of thinking only as I'd been taught to think. A silence fell over the group as they contemplated the magnitude of what they were considering. It was Scrap who broke it, his assembled voice somehow conveying thoughtfulness despite its mechanical nature. Query: if entity awakening is inevitable, and containment only temporary, should priority be seeking permanent solution rather than continued containment? Dr. Wei nodded vigorously. Exactly. The predecessors only managed to delay the cycle, not break it. With their data as a starting point, and with modern scientific approaches from multiple cultural perspectives, perhaps a permanent solution could be developed. So not just a network for truth, but for research, Eva concluded. Ambitious. Dangerous. Probably impossible. A slow grin spread across her face. Sounds like exactly the kind of job the Wanderer was built for. One by one, the crew members voiced their agreement. Even those who had initially regarded Ilera with suspicion now accepted her as one of their own, a fellow outcast with a purpose. As they plotted their course toward Haven Station, where they could begin making the connections they would need, Ilera found herself standing alone in the observation bay, watching the stars beyond the nebula come into view. So much had changed in so little time. She had lost everything she had once valued. Her position, her identity, her belief in the institution she had served faithfully for years. Yet somehow, in that loss, she had found something unexpected: freedom. Freedom to choose her own path, to define her own principles, to forge connections based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical obligation. Eva joined her at the viewport, her reflection appearing beside Alara's in the transparent material. Having second thoughts? No, Alara said with certainty. But I am thinking about how quickly the universe can change one's perspective. A week ago, I would have reported this conversation as sedition. Now I'm helping to plan it. Eva chuckled. Life has a way of redirecting our paths when we least expect it, sometimes violently. She turned to face Alara directly. The offer stands, a permanent place on the Wanderer. We could use someone with your skills and knowledge. Alara considered the offer. The practical part of her mind noted that it was the logical choice. She was now a fugitive from the Alliance, with knowledge that made her a priority target. The Wanderer offered protection, purpose, and a means to pursue their new mission. But there was something else too, something she was still learning to acknowledge. She had come to respect these humans and their diverse companions. Their methods might be unorthodox, their ship a patchwork of salvaged parts, but they possessed a moral clarity and courage that put her former comrades to shame. I accept, she said finally, though I should warn you, I may insist on certain improvements to your engineering systems. The power distribution on this vessel is an affront to basic principles of efficiency. Eva laughed out loud, a sound of genuine amusement that would have been considered inappropriate on an Alliance vessel. I wouldn't have it any other way. Chief Engineer Vance. Welcome aboard, officially. As the Wanderer continued its journey away from the nebula, leaving behind the ruins of Alara's old life and the ancient station with its terrible secrets, she felt something she hadn't experienced since the attack on the indomitable will: hope. Not the complacent hope that came from blind faith in authority, but the active hope born of determination and shared purpose. She had been left to die in the cold emptiness of space, betrayed by those she had trusted most. Then a human ship had broken through the silence, offering not just rescue, but redemption, a chance to forge a new path, to right ancient wrongs, to face the coming darkness not alone but united. The Alliance had taught her that order came from structure, from rigid adherence to hierarchy and protocol. The Wanderer and its crew were teaching her a different lesson. That true strength came from diversity, from adaptation, from the willingness to question and change. As Captain Eva Rostova issued orders for their approach to Haven Station, Alara took her place at the engineering console, not as a guest or a refugee, but as a crew member, a comrade, perhaps even a friend. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and complexity. But for the first time since the attack, Alara felt fully alive. Left to die in space, she had instead been reborn among the stars, with a new mission and a new family to call her own. The silence had been broken, and in its place came the promise of a future worth fighting for.